Alright guys, if you watched the most recent video, you saw that we took my Ford Fairmont station wagon to the Atlas Nationals in Xenia, Ohio. But that was not the only car that we took to the event. We also took my dad's 2010 Camaro SS. And today we're going to go over how that whole adventure went with this car.
Good morning guys, we're back from Six Summer and we had a great time. What an awesome event to be part of, and we really appreciated everybody that came and visited with us, and just thank you for the privilege to have so many people in the community reach out to us and follow along. Wanted to share with you what we're doing since we've returned. Many of you know that we were dealing with a lot of noise in the rear end on the Camaro, and so on Tuesday night we were at the hotel, crawled onto the car and found that the pinion was loose, and we knew we were going to have to nurse it the rest of the way. Day 3 we ran at Tri-State, and unfortunately Calvin had a piston melt, and we're still evaluating and working on that. But in the meantime, we wanted to swap out the rear on the Camaro. It's an independent rear, and we pulled the 325s out. Unfortunately for us, we still had 325s that came out of the Volvo rear. So today we're going to be working on putting that back together. One of the things that I wanted to share with you is the original pinion configuration is a 5-bolt. We're using a 10-bolt, and the clock position of the 10 bolts is actually 10 degrees rotated from the original pattern, and then it duplicates that 5-bolt pattern in between these. So it's a 10-bolt clock, 10 degrees. So Calvin made a pattern, laid everything out in the computer, and then put it on the mill and re-drilled the holes in the right position for this retainer and the support for the independent rear that bolts onto these two flanges here, and then the rear one bolts in here on the back of the housing. Guys, one of the things that you always want to do when you're putting in an aftermarket third member is verify that your through bolts don't hit the back side of the housing. And on a lot of the factory housing, you have to make clearance back here for those through bolts. On this rear end, you can see that it has plenty of clearance, but you always want to do a dry run install so that you can make sure that the ring gear doesn't hit the housing and the through bolts don't hit the back of the housing.
To give you guys a brief overview of the setup, what we have here is what we are calling the All-American Supra. This is a 2-door American sports car that we have tried to emulate the styling of the infamous Toyota Supra with all American parts. To start off, we have a Chevrolet Vortec 4200. This is a 4.2 liter inline-6 that was offered from 2002 to 2009 in the Chevy Trailblazer. From there, it is a bunch of custom parts that are attached to this thing. We made a turbo manifold on the side out of stainless steel turbo headers for an LS, a 80-82 millimeter turbo, a homemade intake manifold with 12 injectors available from Snake Eater Performance, a custom-made oil pan that was machined by a company that is down south, and a alternator relocation kit and 58X trigger kit that we have developed here on the channel. The engine is fairly standard, and on 28 pounds of boost, the car made 824 horsepower at the wheels. Moving back from there, the transmission is a Transbrake Turbo 400, which we actually received with the car. Moving back from there, I gotta say a big thanks to our friends at Ottawa Drive Shaft. They hooked us up with a drive shaft for the car, and the thing is top notch. If you guys are in need of a drive shaft, check them out. Moving back from there, the car has the independent rear suspension that came factory on the car. And not a lot about it is factory. It has been converted to a Ford 9-inch center chunk with basically the entire BMR catalog thrown at the rear suspension. The car has been a personal best of a 929, and today we were hoping to break that record. So let's get to the action.
Sucked.
The Atlas Nationals was held on a particularly hot day. And this is not great news for your track prep because the track often gets very hot, which makes it very greasy. This is definitely not ideal for the tire that we're running on the Camaro, a drag radial, and it was clear that we were going to have to turn the launch down quite a bit and get after it very early before the track became completely unusable. So that's what we did for the second pass.
Shoot. Thank you. All right, good job.
At 153.
153.
Wow.
Alright, we had something we could build off. The car went a 935 at 153 miles per hour, and this was getting close to knocking on the door for the personal best that the car had. We really wanted to try to get the car into the 8s, so for the next pass we turned it up. And unfortunately, the track would not take it. Right where I started to throw the power at the car, it spun pretty bad. And we went back to the drawing board. We tried to take a little bit of power out of it, tried to ramp it in smoother. But as you're about to see, from this point on, it didn't matter how much prep they threw at the track or what changes we made. It was a spin fest. is where I think the problem lies. While we didn't get the best track conditions at Kilcare Dragway, I feel like we could have made better use of it if we had a different rear suspension setup, or at least the ability to tune the one that we have. As I mentioned earlier, this car still has the factory independent rear suspension, and if we go back to the video clips, you'll notice that the car tends to want to squat rather than separate. And since we are running a drag radial on this car, that really isn't the most ideal setup. If we go back to the personal best pass that we have on the Camaro, we went 929 at Beaver Springs Dragway. It still experienced the same squat that we had at Ohio, but the car went right down the track just because the condition of the track is better. And we're sort of getting away with a poor setup, in my opinion. If we want to continue to run a drag radial on this car, we should probably figure out how to get the car to separate and put more load onto the tire, like a drag radial prefers. That being said, if we had brought a drag slick to Ohio, we probably would have been way better off. We figured with a 325 radial, it would work on almost any surface, given that we're not really trying to launch this car particularly hard, but we should have come better prepared. So in the future, we will likely convert this car to a drag slick just because they work in a much wider range. And I like to compare the whole tire thing to another aspect of tuning a car, and that is your fuel type. With gasoline, you have a very narrow range of acceptable air to fuel ratios that the car will live at. Then when you convert to E85, that range gets a little bit wider. And then when you convert to methanol, that range gets very wide. And you can run a very wide range of AFRs, and the car will run great. And drag tires are pretty similar in that respect. With a drag radial, you have this very narrow band where that tire is happy, and if you get outside of it, it's just a spin fest. Whereas with a drag slick, you get a much wider acceptable range for where that tire can operate. And since this car is intended to be a drag and drive car, where you have to race at 4 different tracks over 5 days, you may be running at a track that still has moisture in it. Or you might be running at a track that isn't particularly good at track prep. Or maybe the temperatures are wildly different throughout the week. So look forward to that. We still want to get this car into the 8s, so make sure that you stay tuned for that. And with that, I'm going to end this video off here. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.